good evening, day, morning, whatever time it is for you watching. We're going to talk about how capitalism ruins video games. You could have your favorite video game dreams be true, but capitalism just wants to swoop in and deny you the pleasures of the perfect video game. And before we get started, my name is Fondue. I'm a leftist content creator, and if you like this video, please do like, comment, and subscribe down there. It would help me out a bunch. Also, I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on twitch.tv/funwithfondue. Link down there. And lastly, if you want to support me monetarily, I got a Patreon, patreon.com/funwithfondue. Let's get started then, shall we? I want to talk about how capitalism is ruining video games. What sparked this for me was over the weekend, I was watching the BlizzCon reveal stuff, and then I saw the Overwatch 2 reveal stuff, and I was kind of like, that's it? And that kind of got me thinking about how companies, or why and how capitalism ruins video game companies. And of course, one big point that we can start off with is that in capitalism, short-term profit is like the main focus of a company. Maximizing your quarterly and yearly profits at the expense of long-term stability or profits is the most important thing to do, because you need to grow, because in capitalism you constantly have to be growing, so your profit has to be growing, your revenue has to be growing, you have to bring more value to your shareholders and that stuff. And because of that, you have to grow every quarter, you have to grow every year, and you become very short-sighted. Now, what this means for video games is, due to this short-sightedness, exploitative models become more prevalent in games. For example, microtransactions become more prevalent in games. So you have a game that you even have to pay for, sometimes even full price, and on top of that, you have microtransactions for in-game currency, skins, emotes, or in some cases, loot boxes, although they are not as popular anymore as they were, roughly 5 years ago. That was when loot boxes were like the hot shit. And then of course, a lot of different governments were like, is this gambling? And some governments took some actions against that, like I think Belgium in the case of FIFA Ultimate Team, or Team Ultimate, or what is it called? And EA was like, we're not gonna back down. The UK, I think, ruled that it wasn't. I think the state of Hawaii looked into it. So a lot of regulatory bodies started looking at loot boxes due to their gambling-like features. Of course, the main argument for loot boxes not being gambling is that you can't get real-world money out of it. You get only skins, in-game currency, which you can't trade for real-world money, etc., etc. So that's like the main argument against. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't like, because they are built to be attractive and addictive, you know. A loot box, like if you look at how a loot box, for example, opens, the animation, the sounds, everything, it's very flashy, very cool, exciting, and that's not by, it's not an accident. That's by design, because it gets you hooked. I don't mind personally loot boxes or microtransactions that much if the game is free. Like, if it's free, fine, alright, I understand it, the game has to make money. I get it. But what I would like to see in like free-to-play video games, that you have to buy them with direct money. I don't like in-game currencies, because in-game currencies are 100% just to obfuscate the actual cost of things, because when there's in-game currency, it's harder to tell the actual price of things, because you have to purchase the in-game currency with real money and then use the in-game currency to buy things, so the real cost of things becomes unclear, and I don't like that. It should just be like direct purchases. That would be a lot better, in my opinion. Like, I don't mind them that much in free-to-play games, I understand. But anyway, What I'm getting at is that these models are exploitative to some degree, and short-term profits, of course, and short-term, like, short-sightedness drives companies to do this, because it's seen as a very lucrative model, and it is a very lucrative model. If you look at mobile games, like, the top mobile games make a really, really high amount of money. This is not for the whole year of 2020, but just to give you an idea of how much games, free-to-play games, can make money on mobile. So this is for Honor of Kings, which is a mobile game similar to League of Legends. It's very big in China, and it made just in the month of November last year, so this is only November 2020, Honor of Kings made roughly $230 million for microtransactions alone. Just 1 month. So microtransactions are huge. And even Ubisoft has said the same thing. From Q4 of fiscal year 20, so I think that's the previous fiscal year, Ubisoft earned $636.92 million from player recurring investments. So these are microtransactions, DLCs, season passes, etc. So this part of the game industry is very lucrative, which is why a lot of companies are shifting towards it, or make it a lot. So they might make like a premium game like Ubisoft does with, for example, Assassin's Creed. You have a premium game like Assassin's Creed, and then on top of that, you have a season pass with DLC, etc. Because the season pass, etc., bring in a lot of money. That's one of the things that, you know, is a part of capitalism, because you want more growth, more revenue, more profit in a short amount of time. And then, so this is the part where, you know, one part of capitalism then is, because you want more growth on a shorter period of time, you start making smaller changes to the products that you have or put out, because of course you don't have time to spend, or you don't want to spend as much time on products as you used to. So you make smaller changes and release stuff then. I mean, we see this in other markets as well, where, you know, oh, the new phone came out, this time it has a bit better of a camera, but it's not like revolutionarily different. Like the next Samsung Galaxy mainline is not going to be like, holy shit, it's a completely different phone. And it's like, no, it just has a better processor, better GPU, better screen, better camera, and that's it. These smaller incremental changes that we also see in other industries happen in games as well. I mean, Overwatch 2 is a perfect example of, they were showing Overwatch 2 and they were like, here's the new design for Reaper, and legitimately it looked so similar to the previous one. And then they're talking about like the new features. Oh, it's gonna have like a skill tree. It's like that can be a lot of work. Yes, totally understand. Then there's gonna be PvE, but that looked more like an extension of what they've already had in Overwatch 1. Like, Overwatch 2 didn't really look like it was a significant sequel. It looked more like a DLC, in my mind, of course. This is just my opinion, and I'm just using it as an example. But we see the similar thing happen in other games as well, where, you know, okay, we gotta get the next one out faster and faster, and we're just gonna make smaller incremental changes. I mean, Call of Duty, FIFA, Madden, the games that come out every year, you know. And that leads to that also, that you want to focus on getting games out as fast and as much of them as possible, until, you know, your audience gets tired of it. We see the same in Marvel movies, where like they were pumping so many Marvel movies out until the pandemic hit. They were pumping out so many Marvel movies per year. A lot of people, myself included to some degree, were getting really just fatigued. It's like there's so many of these movies, and they're so samey, because they're all made with the same formula. And then it happens with the games as well, you know. It's the next Call of Duty. It's gonna be, you know, gonna have the shooting, gonna have this. This time it's gonna be, I don't know, Vietnam War, and next time it's gonna be space or whatever, but the core is still the same. It's just a little bit of a different paint this time. Instead, of, you know, taking the time to work on games and take bigger risks. So you see less new intellectual property or IPs, which means like completely new products, like Bloodborne, for example. Bloodborne was a new IP, even though it spun from the Dark Souls series, but it's a new IP, so to speak. You see less of those now because they're riskier. Because when you make a new IP, there's a lot more work that goes into it. You have to figure out, you know, what is the core of the game that you're making. If it's a completely new game that your studio is making, you have to figure out, like, what's the game about, what's the core, what's the art style, what type of technology do we need. Like, it's a lot more risky of a project, and I understand that, but it leads to us having just more sequels, because sequels are less risky, because you already know what the core of the game is, and you're building on top of something that exists. And you get remakes, and remakes are safer because the game already has recognition, so it's easier to market. The game already has the fundamentals there. Then you just got to go in and say, okay, we're gonna give it a facelift, for example, like the Demon's Souls remake, for example. Fantastic game, don't get me wrong. I think it's a great game, but it benefits from, you know, being a remake instead of a brand new game. And because of this fight to get more money, more growth, more profits, it makes more sense from a cold business sense to push for sequels and remakes rather than new IP, because new IP is very risky and scary, and there can be a lot of money that's lost because of that. But it's sad. Creatively, it's kind of sad, because if we look at, like, if we go to the Xbox 360 and PS3 era, or even before that, the PS2 era, how many new IPs were being made around that time? Also, it was due to game teams being smaller as well, and budgets being smaller as well, granted. But back then, there was way more new IPs than there are now. But actually, this brings us to a very good point, that since games have to come out faster and faster, games also come out less complete. Not always, but I would like to, as a case, Cyberpunk 2077. The game came out now, what, 4 months ago? No, not even 4, 3 months, like roughly 3 months ago, in a very poor state. And I feel really bad for the game developers because it wasn't their call. The game wasn't ready to ship. Maybe on PC, maybe, arguably. Still, a lot of people had problems on PC, but definitely not on console. The game was not ready. But it got released because the board of directors decided, the executives, they decided that, okay, the game has to get released. But the developers didn't get to decide that. It was just people who are very high up get to decide this and get to make the creative decisions and the crucial decisions for the project. Fallout 76, fantastic example. Another one. Game came out, not in a good state, very bare bones. No Man's Sky, although not AAA, came out, bare bones. Now in a very good state now, from what I hear, it's a really, really great game, but came out in a very bare bones state. Now, I think this is different to when you have an early access game, because with early access, you set the expectations that this game is still being developed together with the community. I think that's different. But with like Cyberpunk didn't come out as an early access title. It came out as a full-fledged, like, ready product, and it wasn't. And this gets to one of my big irks in the industry and in capitalism in general, is that executives are making the decisions, shareholders are making the decisions, not the developers. The people who are actually making the games, the people who are actually there, who know the realities, who understand where the projects are and what is realistic and what is not, they don't get to make a decision, or they don't even get to decide who makes the decisions. They don't get to decide who their CEO is. They don't get to decide who their manager is. And that leads to that leads to creative stagnation, because trust me, the developers of Cyberpunk knew that the game wasn't ready. And the CEO of the company, when he said, a bit over a year ago that the game was basically like playable from start to finish, and they just need to polish it up. The developers confronted the CEO asking like, why did you tell this? This wasn't true. It wasn't the case. Why did you say this? And then he just dodged the question, basically. Like, I think that we could get much more better, more interesting, varied games if we had more democratic workplaces. I think workplaces should be democratized. It's a very important thing in my opinion. And because they're not, now people at the top are making decisions about things that they don't understand, about things that they don't know, because they're not making the games, they're not there in the realistic situation. And then they're saying the game has to come out now, and you're like, no, it's not ready. We can't push it out now. They say, no, it has to come out because we need to make it to the Christmas market, otherwise our share values will drop. And this is, again, is the short-sightedness. You are unwilling to take the hit in share price, but you are willing to release a very undercooked product that will damage your reputation for years to come. It will damage the morale of your teams because your teams will be so disappointed that they had to put out something in that state even though they knew it wasn't ready. And it will damage the relationship with your customers because they bought a product that you had been hyping for years. But hey, at least you got sales, right? And again, the people the people who are doing these things of going in public and yapping this bullshit, they're not the people making the games and like on the floor. They're executives like Todd Howard who are saying these things. Like, when the game is when the game is released and it's not ready, you think the CEO or the creative director or whatever, you think he's going to be there fixing all of the bugs? You think he's going to be there programming every single bug to fix it? No. It's the people who work on the game. Now they've been doing overtime already on Cyberpunk for like some people for over a year already. Crazy overtime, which probably is one of the reasons why the game is so buggy, because you're overworking your employees and they make more mistakes when they're exhausted. This is just how humans work. But yeah, so you overwork them and the game comes out and it's broken. And now they have to overwork more because they have to fix the game. And it's a terrible situation to be in, this firefighting mode where you're just trying to fix things as fast as you can. It's not fun. For developers, that's a terrible place to be, where you're trying to fix the game. It's a terrible, terrible place. It's not fulfilling creatively. It's really stressful. And the one problem that you run into is that usually the bugs, a big portion of the bugs are going to be programming related. And what that means is because they're programming related bugs, artists and designers are not going to be able to fix them. And they're going to have some bugs, but at some point they're going to be like, well, we don't have anything to do right now. We can work on the next thing, but we need programmers to do X, Y, and Z, for example. So now this next thing is being held back because of it. If you're not happy with the fact that your games are coming out broken more now than ever before, you know what you should do? You should be pushing for the game industry to unionize, because when the industry unionizes, then things can actually change. Then we can have actually meaningful change. Some real change. Because once we have that real change, then you can start getting, less shitty games and workers being treated better. But yeah, if you care about, better games coming out, and you want better games, less broken games, then you should support developers unionizing so that they can demand for better working conditions and that they have a voice to be heard when games get released and how they are released. So anyway, this was my little spiel on why capitalism and how capitalism is ruining video games. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe down there. I'm also live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Central European Time. Link also down there. And lastly, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/funwithfondue. You can support me there monetarily for some extra goodies. Link down there. And hey, have a good one now. All right? All right.